guys, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to work on getting the rear diff out, slowly getting this quad torn apart and getting it ready for race season, so stick around. So I'm going to come over here, going to start pulling the rear diff out. I rebuilt this diff two race seasons ago, so it's got probably 20-25 races on it. So this quad's a 2018, and back then the XXCs had the regular standard diff in them. A lot of the racers back then were putting XMR diffs in, swapping them in because they're a little bit stronger. They have two bearings here for the pinion, which this is an XMR diff. The 19 and newer quads, XXC quads, actually have this rear diff in them. So I'm going to pull this out, clean it all out. I'm going to show you guys how to do it, and let's get after it. Little tip for you guys, when you're changing your oil on these rear diffs, you get the right Allen key here and use a wrench and just put that on the Allen key like that. Works really good. Do it all the time. I also do that for the fill plug. Look at that, tab broke right off on the frame here for the rear diff. Looks like I'll be welding that up too. Both sides broke. Alright, so we got the rear diff all cleaned apart here, and I want to show you guys how to set the backlash. What you need here is a dial meter. You gotta have a piece of square stock or something, and bolt this into the rear diff using rear diff bolt. And then from an inch, let me get this out of the way, an inch up from the center of that hole, you gotta put a mark right there, and that's where your dial will sit when you go to adjust it. And you got to have a clamp or something to hold your gears in there from turning. So I got a clamp on here. You can see this. I just put the axle back in, got the clamp on, and then we'll see what the backlash is here. And you can just hear the gear. You just turn it till it stops. So it looks like I got
about 12 or 13 thousandths on here. So I'll take this apart, try to shim it right. I'm going to try to get this to about 10 thousandths of an inch, maybe a little less. Alright, so I got the diff all cleaned up. I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to show you how I shim this. I'm not an expert in this. I actually fiddle around with this for probably an hour to figure it out before I can come on here and explain it to you guys as best as I can. But so I'm going to take the cover off here. And I think I mentioned it before, but this is a XMR diff, and it has straight cut gears as opposed to this diff over here. This has spiral cut gears. These were on the early XMRs, these spiral cut gears up until 19, I believe, maybe 20. And then they switched over to these standard cut gears. I think the idea was that BRP said they're 25% stronger than the spiral cut gears. But they started putting these on the XXCs and the XMRs. They switched over to them straight cut gears. So the backlash that we're looking for, I have it written on the board here. So here are the rear diff numbers that we're looking for the backlash. An XMR diff with straight cut gears, which is what I have. We're looking for 8 thousandths to 10 thousandths of an inch backlash. The XMR helical cut gears, we're looking for 4 thousandths to 7 thousandths of an inch. But the diff that I have is this one here. So that's what we're looking for, between 8 and 10 thousandths of an inch. Actually, this diff right here is brand new with helical cut gears. From the factory, I believe it was 8 thousandths of an inch. So even from the factory, these are off just a little bit. And I got those numbers over here for the backlash. Shout out to Specialized ATV. I contacted them and they actually gave me those numbers there. And if you remember, if you watched my other videos, I got the parts of my front diff from them. So awesome to deal with. Highly recommend them. So there's actually shims in here. There's 2 bearings in here in this XMR diff, and there's shims in there to move this pinion in and out so you have good contact with your ring gear. I'm going to show you guys. I think I got this shim just about right. Like I said, I screwed around with it for like an hour, and it feels pretty good. A little bit of backlash in there. Of course, that will change when you put the case on and you bolt it down. So you can't really go off of this. You'd have to put it all back together and measure the backlash on it. But I just want to show you guys an example of this, which I think I got it pretty good. A little bit of play in there. And we spin this around. It sounds pretty good. So I think I got it shimmed right. Well, I'm going to show you guys an example. As I got this really thick shim, I'm going to put it in here and show you guys what happens. And you usually you shim the bottom first in here, and then you do the other side, the upper side. So let me get this race out of here. We'll throw this thick shim in here, and I'll show you the difference in the backlash. Alright, so I got that really thick shim in there. We'll put this back on, and I'll show you the difference. See how much play? Well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a ton of play in there now. See how much I'm moving that? So that means it's shimmed too thick. So I'll take that out, and I'll put no shims in there, and I'll show you the results of that. Alright, so there's no shims in there now, and you can kind of hear the gears really clanging together there. So there's like no There's no backlash on this at all. And that's going to prematurely wear your gears. It's going to produce a lot of heat. Going to wear the gears down, so that's not what we're looking for there. So it's pretty important that you shim this correctly. I'm going to pull this race back out, and I'm going to put what I think is the right amount of shims in there. I have a thick shim and then a really thin one, and you probably can't see on here, but these shims have notches in them. So this one here has nothing. There's no notches on this. It's a little thicker. This shim has one notch. It's the thinnest one they got. And then there's other one, you know, there's a bunch of different shims. They have 2 notches, 3 notches. I've never seen a 4-notch one in a Can-Am, but I do have a couple with 2s and 3s. So I'm gonna throw these back in here. Alright, so this is what I think is shimmed right. You don't hear that grinding noise from the pinion and the ring gear. There's a little bit of backlash. And one way to check how much contact you get with the ring gear and the pinion is to put never sees on here, and that will transfer onto the pinion gear, and you can see what your contact looks like. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, let me get the flashlight here. So you can see down here, I know it might be kind of hard to see with the GoPro, but I'm making contact down to here with the grease, with the ring gear for the pin onto the pinion, which seems to me pretty good. So I think I got it shimmed just about right on the lower part of the case here. So we'll go ahead and put the ring gear in, and we'll shim the top now. Sometimes these races are a pain in the butt to get out. What I found, I have this screwdriver. Seems to work pretty good to get it up underneath it and kind of pry it out if you have to. Just be careful not to scratch the inside of this. But it seems to work pretty good to get these races out. I'm going to take these shims out. I'm going to throw that really thick one in, which I have quite a few shims in this one on the top. So I'm going to throw this really thick shim in the top. It's probably 3 times the thickness of what I'm really using. I'm going to throw this in here and show you guys what it's like. And you can only shim these so much. Like that, with this thick one on here, you'll see I can't even get the cover on all the way on this. So you'll know right away that it's shimmed way too much. So I'm going to put all these shims back in that I had in there. And I'm going to throw this. This has 2 notches on it. I'm going to throw this on top of here, and then we'll see what it's like with the backlash. Alright, so I got that, like I said, I got that extra shim in there. Put this back all the way, dial this to 0. I know you guys can't really see that. So this mark here is 10 thousandths of an inch. This is 20 thousandths of an inch. We're looking for about 8 thousandths to 10 thousandths, which would be right here. And the way that this is set up with that extra shim that I have in there, it's like 5 to 6 thousandths. So we're gonna pull this top cover off again. I'm gonna pull that extra shim out, and then we'll go back into this and I'll show you the difference. So we took that extra shim out. It's set at 0 right now. This is 10 thousandths there. We're looking at about 8 to 9 thousandths, and we're supposed to be 8 to 10 thousandths. So I think I got it shimmed pretty good here. I do have one issue though. I wasn't going to rebuild this diff. Usually these bearings on the side for the axle, these bearings, I don't know if I've ever had these go bad, unless you are a mud rider and you ride in the mud and your water gets in there. Sometimes the seals will wear out, and I've changed those. But the biggest thing are the bearings in here and the needle bearing inside on the end of that pinion. So the problem with this is your drive shaft on a Can-Am comes in on an angle. So there's putting more lateral pressure on these bearings here, which wear them out prematurely, as opposed to an axle, which is most of the time just, it's straight out. This is on an angle, so you're putting pressure on these bearings, and these bearings wear out. And you know, I got this thing all back together, ready to go, and I started really racking on this up and down to see if there was play, and there is a little play in there. So I'm gonna have to get I'm not going to replace these outside bearings. I'll replace the pinion bearings here and that needle bearing, and then you have to replace the seal. You can't get the seal out here without destroying it, so we'll have to pull it all apart. I'm going to get the new bearings for that and put it back together. So, and this is the brand new one, the brand new diff I have, and there's no play whatsoever in this pinion here. So you wiggle this just a little bit, but guys won't see it on camera, but you can wiggle it just a little bit, and I don't like that, so I'm gonna replace them. There's a nut right here you got to pull out. I believe this is reverse threads, this outer one. So I made this socket up here. So that's reverse threads. You righty to loosen that one, and then that pinion will pull right out here. All right, so I'm gonna replace this bearing. There's a bearing, a spacer. There's some shims in here, and then the bearing. I'm gonna replace these two bearings, and then also you can see the needle bearing down in there. Let me get this off. That needle bearing down in there, I'm gonna pull that out. There's some more shims that were in there too. They go on this side of the. They go like that. More shims, lots of shims, so don't lose them. I'm gonna see my new slide hammer, if it will fit in there and I can pull that out. Well, it ain't working. I'm gonna have to go to old school way, weld the nut on there like I did with my front diff, and pull that needle bearing, the cage out of there for that. So I was hoping the slide hammer would work, but I guess it's not working. It's ripping the collar of that. It's just, I don't know if you can see in there, it's just breaking off the tab where the needles bearings actually sit. So I have to go weld the nut on that and pull it out that way. All right, I'm over in the shop here, and I'm gonna take a nut. I'm gonna weld it to that race in there, and then I'm gonna pull it out. So hopefully that'll get it out. There, finally got it. Third time is a charm. So I'll clean this. There's a lot of slag in here. I'll clean all this up and prep it to get the new needle bearing in there. So I'll have to go over to the other shop. Alright, got my bearings in, got my seals in. We're going to rebuild this pinion here. Put new bearings in it. I got a new seal. The new seal for the XMR diff is 3888. I bought new bearings. These are Koyo bearings, Japan. The number here is 30207. A lot of companies will sell kits for this to rebuild this. I source these bearings out by myself. I think I got them on Amazon. And you can save about $100 just buying individual bearings and seals and stuff like that, as opposed to a kit. So I'm gonna pull this. Gotta take this nut off here. Got my puller. I'm gonna pull these bearings off. There are shims on this side, which I took off already, and then we'll press the new bearings on here, put it all back together. I also got a new needle bearing for in here. I'd try sourcing this needle bearing out, and it was just as much as buying it from one of the Canyon parts guys. So I ordered that from Canyon's parts guy, and I got the new bearing for there. Alright, so I got this inner bearing in all the way. There's a spacer between the bearings here. And then you have your shims, which go on next, like this. Then your other bearing goes on this way. So the race sits against those shims. Alright, so we got to put this nut on here. Mine was hand tightened when I took it apart. I'll throw the specs up, torque specs up there on screen now. It might just be hand tightened, but I'll have to look it up. And then once this is on, the O-ring goes on the outside. O-ring goes on the outside here. So you got your nut, you got your bearing, you got a spacer, you got two shims. Below this spacer is another spacer between the two bearings so they don't rub together, the insides, or it takes up the space in between the bearings, I should say. Then these two shims both have 3 notches on them. It could vary depending on your backlash or your contact with your ring gear. You got another bearing, and then you have a spacer that goes here, and then you have 2 more shims which you may need to adjust
so you have good contact with your pinion and your ring gear. You guys saw me having a heck of a time getting these bearings on and off. I used a bearing puller. I also used, well, here's the bearing puller. I use my ball joint press here. Just use a combination of things to get them on and off. I got, you know, these spacers that go so you can push bearings in and out. So if you're gonna change one of these, have a couple different tools to your disposal so you can kind of figure out what works to get them off. I gotta put the needle bearing in here. I have it in the freezer right now, shrinking up a little bit. I'll pound that in, and then we'll put this inside the diff, and then I'll have to go through and adjust the backlash again, just to make sure it's right. I'm not going to show you guys that. You've seen me adjust the backlash already a couple times, so you guys should know how to do it now. But let's get this thing back together and get it ready for the quad. Alright guys, got the diff back together here. Got the backlash set right. It's about 8/1000ths of an inch. This pinion retaining nut here, the big one, that's Loctited, and that's supposed to be torqued to 133 foot-pounds. This inner one, this, I don't know if it's a pinion nut or whatever they call it here. I just tightened that one up. I didn't torque it down. I don't know if there's torque specs on that. But I got it all back together. Backlash is good, and all we got to do is put the seal on here. I got a new seal for here. I'll put this new seal on, and I'll also put a new let's see, I got a new wear ring for the yoke that goes in there. So usually whenever I replace these seals, I put a new wear ring in there. All right, we got the seal on here, and there is no play up and down as opposed to before I changed the bearings. There was a little bit of play. There's no play up and down. It's tight. Hopefully you guys learned something about rebuilding your diff and shimming it properly here. There are some special tools you gotta have to do it. Hopefully you learned something. Next, I gotta tear into the motor and get that thing all fixed up. And I'll have that on the next video, so stick around, and thanks for watching.